Gentlemen, I've come to ask for some help. The case is getting a life of its own. The hidden kids of Omer, because that is what it's all about. Is they hid these kids from everybody.
A major update on the 16 Siders children rescued from the so-called House of Horrors and how long they could be in foster care as the investigation moves forward and grows and more clues.
The words come not from a press release, but from a public budget meeting where a county prosecutor had to ask for $20,000 just to keep the investigation running. Think of that image. A prosecutor going before a board, arguing for overtime money the same way a city manager argues for a pothole repair. Meanwhile, the subject of the funding request is a property where, according to court records, 16 human beings were kept out of sight so completely that the state itself is asking for permanent custody before the criminal trial even begins. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Law and Crime Insiders, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The state is seeking permanent custody of all 16 children. This is not family reunification. This is not a temporary shelter order while parents take parenting classes. Permanent custody means the state's evidence has already bypassed the normal legal bias toward healing the family unit.
Meeting notes from the July 14th County Commission meeting state, Prosecutor William Archer attended the commissioners' meeting asking for $20,000 additional money to help with the cost of the Siders case. If all of it is not used, it will be returned. He has some help from the state, but it will not cover all. The Children's Services cases will be another expense as the county is asking for permanent custody of the children. The commissioners will discuss and determine where the money will come from. Now, audio of the meeting was also recorded. Take a listen.
I'm making a request for a separate line item for the Siders case. I'm asking for $20,000. If we don't spend it,
We aren't just talking about the house on Omar Street. We are now talking about a chilling secondary property, a prior address in Gallia County, where the physical structure became a piece of evidence itself. Imagine a wall where the damage climbs from the floor upward. Usually, you see damage from a flood or a pipe. It starts at the baseboard. Here, the contamination was layered from the floor to the attic. A man who later rehabilitated the property reported that the interior contained children's clothing piled in an attic crawlspace, as if it was a sleeping area, saturated in a combination of human and animal waste.
But first, let's talk about the houses where the Siders lived before they made the move from Gallia County to Vinton County in 2021. From the records we've gathered, it appears the Siders moved from Gallia to Vinton in 2020 or 2021. Birth records show that Gary and Elizabeth Siders lived at 5 different addresses beginning in 2015 when the first child was born. The last known address for Gary, Elizabeth, and their children was in Cheshire. The house sits on Honeysuckle Drive. A neighbor who did not want to appear on camera told us he remembers the family. He said he thought there were 9 children. This would have been in 2020 or 2021. The neighbor said the family kept to themselves, and while he saw children outside at times, mostly they just stayed in the house. A woman who works nearby told us the house was absolutely trashed by the Siders. She knows the man who owns it. And we previously told you that the man who rehabbed the house told ABC6 in Columbus that the house was full of urine and pet.
The property wasn't just neglected, it was diagnostically contaminated. There is a pathology to a room so filled with urine that the subfloor is destroyed. That kind of decay is not a one-time accident. It is a clock. It measures the exact duration of silent suffering that occurred before anyone knocked on the door. The children were hidden. A neighbor from that Gallia County address stated they thought maybe 9 kids lived there. But they weren't sure, because the family mostly just stayed in the house. The gap between official documentation and objective reality is where the horror lives. Court records place the family at multiple addresses across 2 counties. The birth records create a paper trail of expanding life, 16 births. But the physical world saw only a closed door and a father who occasionally walked into a store to buy scratch-off lottery tickets and nothing else. He tipped the clerk $10 one time.
The house sits on Honeysuckle Drive. A neighbor who did not want to appear on camera told us he remembers the family. He said he thought there were 9 children. This would have been in 2020 or 2021. The neighbor said the family kept to themselves, and while he saw children outside at times, mostly they just stayed in the house. A woman who works nearby told us the house was absolutely trashed by the Siders. She knows the man who owns it. And we previously told you that the man who rehabbed the house told ABC6 in Columbus that the house was full of urine and pet and human feces. The man also said the attic was full of children's clothing, as if someone was living in it. The woman who works nearby told us that Gary Jr. actually used to come into the store where she works to buy scratch-offs. She said Gary Jr. didn't buy anything else but scratch-off lottery tickets.
That is the banal detail that sits next to the atrocities. We have a man casually tipping a cashier while, according to state investigators, the children inside his walls were being deprived of education, medical care, and basic contact with the outside world. They were hidden. That is the moral refrain here, the active verb that defines the crime. A family registry with the state school system didn't exist. They weren't truant in the way a kid skipping homeroom is truant. They were erased from the civic grid entirely. They were hidden.
What reason would anybody have to keep their kids out of school? I mean, there's been some rumors and talk that maybe they were homeschooled, but you have to register with the state if you're homeschooling kids. You can't just like keep them home and say, we're keeping them home and we're just going to do it ourselves. I mean, there's a process there.
Yes, to me, if you're not sending your kids to school and you're not homeschooling them, you don't want the people at the school to see these kids. And if a kid is physically or emotionally or mentally somehow abused, people are going to pick up on that real quick at school. The classmates are going to go home and tell their parents, so and so came to school today, and either she told me this or I noticed this about her, and word's going to get out. So I think that would be the main factor. These parents don't want people to realize what's going on in the house.
This brings us to the national security dimension of the ordinary. We rely on a social contract where the local school bus, the pediatrician, or the neighbor mowing the lawn acts as a tripwire for extreme abuse. When a family silos itself, moving from one county to another the moment a children's services agency makes contact, those tripwires fail. The family moved from Gallia County to Vinton County right around the time questions started to surface.
The exact nature of it, but then I was able to kind of verify that. So I've got that from at least two sources that Gallia County CPS had kind of had some type of contact with this family, and then boom, they take off. That in and of itself is pretty concerning because they moved just one county north.
Well, I don't know how the county children's services agencies communicate with each other, but you mentioned 4 different moves. If there's one visit from a children's services agency and things are bad and they're bad, I can see why the family thinks, you know what, we got to get out of town. We got to move on to someplace else. And maybe that's the reason why they kept moving around, because they knew that children's services agency is going to come back.
Here is the ticking clock moment. If a family can move 16 children across county lines without triggering an automatic cross-jurisdictional flag, how many other houses in rural America right now contain a similar ticking clock of decay, hiding in plain sight under the legal cover of homeschooling or privacy? The prosecutor told the commissioners that the Attorney General's office has a computer crime section dedicated to the case, that they are downloading electronic devices. That tells you the investigation isn't looking backward at just the biological squalor, it is looking at the network. They are hunting for production. They are hunting for distribution. The scale expands from a single, family house of horrors to a digital footprint of criminal liability.
More information about that in the future. What do you think is going on with this investigation right now? There's been talk about downloading electronic devices. There's been talk about a computer crime section with the AG's office being involved in this case. And plus, the interviews of many family members.
I think, number one, they're doing physical and mental examinations of the kids, just trying to see how seriously they are abused. If they are doing computer searches on them, then that tells me, again, just from my experience, I know you said it too, we don't know what is out there, but the only reason you would be doing that, in my experience, is looking for some kind of either sex videos that they're downloading and sharing with the kids, or maybe sex videos that they're producing with the kids. And again, I've had cases like that before where the parents are physically having sex with 2 and 3 and 4-year-old kids and then posting that online and sharing.
Let us return to the physical evidence of the prior property. The biological contamination was so complete that a rehab crew had to gut it, but it is the attic that serves as the psychological thesis statement of this case. Children's clothing was hoarded in an attic space. An attic is a place of extreme temperature, an unfinished storage void. To a child, an attic is not a bedroom, it is a place you are sent. The visual anchor of this entire tragedy is a small pile of fabric in the dark corner of an unventilated attic. A makeshift bed for a human being who was not allowed to exist on the lower floors with the rest of the world. It is the architecture of concealment. And in the new case in Vinton County, the request for permanent custody reveals that the state has concluded the danger is not linked to a specific piece of real estate, but to the people themselves. The property changes, but the condition of the children likely remained the static, terrifying constant. They were hidden.
Yeah, and that's what's shocking to me, because that is what the courts, that's basically what they err on the side of reuniting the children
Yes.
with the parents and what is in the best interest of the child. And they always seek to reunify.
Yes.
Elizabeth Sider's lawyer, Tommy Stolley, wrote in a motion that her goal is to get out of jail and be reunited with her children. But
Yeah.
we're very early on in this. We're just a little more than 3 weeks in, and they're saying we're seeking permanent custody.
Well, that
So
tells me that these kids must be permanently damaged. And I've had kids situations like that where even though they're young kids, you can tell they're never going to recover from the abuse they've been going through, emotional, physical, sexual, whatever it is. And I don't care what these parents do in the future. There's no way we can, in good conscience.
We know from the county commission meeting that the prosecutor, William Archer, explicitly told the board that the case has got a life of its own. The phrase sounds defensive, almost exhausted. What he is really saying is that the initial search warrant was not a welfare check for 16 kids. Law enforcement went to the Omar Street address for a different reason, likely related to a series of public indecency allegations against the father that surfaced just days before the raid. They went in looking for a misdemeanor suspect and walked into a mass casualty neglect event. That is the irony explosion. The state tripped over an atrocity while investigating a lesser obscenity.
they won't tell us what the initial search warrant was for that they went there for, but they said it wasn't related to these 16 children. They were shocked when they went in there. But obviously somebody reported, and we don't know who it is, somebody reported that Gary Jr. was exposing himself at the home address on 4 different occasions in the last week of May. So
Yes.
in my mind, I'm like, well, what took so long? Because that's a pretty, unless there was a lag in reporting it, what do you think could be behind that?
Again, it's a smaller county. It's got a smaller police department. That's a weird charge, but maybe they had bigger things they had to take care of at the time. Or maybe it's a situation where it's my understanding the kids have not been going to school. That's one thing they have to look at. Now you've got the dad exposing themselves, and maybe somebody decided, there's probably more there than we're seeing. So maybe that's why they geared up. They got in BCI, they got the attorney general involved, and probably did a good job on the search warrant. So when they went in there, they could get everything they wanted. So again, it's probably limited resources is a big part of why there was a delay.
And yet, immediately, the legal machinery of a small county buckles under the weight. They needed an extra 20 grand just to process the overtime. The state's attorney general had to deploy resources to a house containing a small population of unseen children simply to confirm they existed. They were hidden. The evidence list from the prior Gallia County home is essentially a biological indictment. Feces and urine do not lie. They soak into the wood and the drywall and create a permanent geological record of neglect. This is not a subjective claim by a messy neighbor. It is a biohazard. The gap between the public record and the private reality is absolute. While the outside world saw a man losing money on lottery tickets, the inside of the Honeysuckle Drive property was being rendered uninhabitable for any future human being. The defense lawyers are now playing the long game, delaying a simple indecency hearing because a guilty plea on a minor public exposure charge becomes a predicate admission if larger sexual abuse or endangerment charges drop. The legal strategy is a silent admission of how dark the upcoming charges might be. We are left with the paper trail. You can look at the Vinton County Commissioner meeting minutes from July 14th. They are public. The request for money is right there in the line items, a bureaucratic plea to handle the unthinkable.
Listen,
I'm making a request for a separate line item for the Siders case. I'm asking for $20,000. If we don't spend it, it'll go right back to you guys. But I'm going to have overtime and things that I'm going to have to. A case of this magnitude is not an easy thing to do, and I can't ask Anika's staff to do work, and the AG's office is providing some assistance. They've got their own caseloads as well. And just so you know, this is not just about the criminal case. There's also the children's services case, which we will be asking for permanent custody of all 16 kids. So we've got that case related cases that started all of this that's going to be involved as well. And then we may do something about the house and the people who are trespassing into the house. So it really has got a life of its own. And so I'm asking the county's commitment to help me with that.
This is
My question to you, the viewer, is this: go find those county budget records. Read the sterile language of the permanent custody request. Then look at the list of donations posted by South Central Ohio Job and Family Services for these children. The request for sensory toys, for motor skill development tools, for basic learning flashcards.
to donate. It includes toys, art supplies for coloring or drawing, journaling and scrapbook items, fidget toys, magnetiles, puzzles with handles, baby dolls and plush stuffed toys, push-behind walking toys, learning and sensory toys for infants and toddlers, especially in gross and fine motor skills, preschool through 12th grade learning materials, such as flashcards, books, learning games, children's clothing, all sizes, diapers, all sizes, pull-ups, all sizes. It says we will not be releasing clothing or shoe sizes to the public. Donations received at this time will be prioritized to the children you are requesting to donate to. Any remaining items will be provided to other children in care. Again, thank you for your compassion and interest in helping our children. The donations can be dropped off on weekdays at the South Central Office of Job and Family Services. That address is
Look at the gap between a 16-year-old who needs a high school textbook and a 16-year-old who needs a fidget spinner for emotional regulation. How do we close the gap between a hidden life and a recovered one? Tell me in the comments. I want to know if you think the bureaucratic system of county line transfers failed these kids, or if this was simply an unsolvable monster slipping through the cracks. If you believe in holding systems accountable with forensic clarity, like this video, share it, subscribe to Law and Crime Insiders, and turn on notifications. We don't just follow the headlines, we read the line items.